Have you ever completed a page of text, gotten to the bottom, and discovered you have virtually no clue what you just read? Your eyes scanned every word. You noticed them, yet somehow nothing stuck. It's like the content simply flowed through your head like water through a sieve. This ranks among the most maddening parts of learning. We read something vital, something we must grasp, and the next day it's vanished. A week later, we might as well have never opened the book. So, what's going on here? Why does our mind allow so much to simply fade away? The reason isn't that we possess poor recall. The issue is that we've fundamentally misjudged what memory really is and how it operates. Most people regard their mind like a recording machine, like a video camera meant to capture everything in view. But that's not how it works, not even remotely. Consider the last time you moved through your home. You observe the furniture, the walls, the doorways. But right now, could you detail the exact pattern of scratches on your doorknob or the precise count of books on your shelf? You noticed the objects, but you didn't record them. Your mind didn't preserve them because it didn't judge them significant. This is the initial lesson to grasp. Your mind is not attempting to retain everything. It's attempting to retain what's valuable, and determines what's valuable based on very precise indicators. If we wish to recall what we read, we must comprehend these indicators and cooperate with them, not resist them. Let's begin with what truly occurs when you read something. The words enter through your eyes. They get handled in the visual cortex. Then they're turned into meaning within the language regions of your brain. But here's the essential piece. Just because data arrives at your brain doesn't mean it gets saved there. It's like the difference between someone speaking to you and you actually noting it down. The information was there, but was it captured? Memory creation demands something beyond mere exposure. It demands encoding, and encoding does not occur automatically. It occurs when your brain concludes that the information justifies the energy required to keep it. Because let's be clear, retaining things demands energy. Sustaining neural pathways, reinforcing synapses, linking fresh data with existing data. All this consumes resources. So your brain is a discriminating. Picture it like this. Imagine you're tramping through untouched snow. The first time you blaze a trail, you leave tracks, but they're faint. If snow falls again, those tracks vanish. But if you tread the identical trail daily, eventually you form a distinct path. The snow becomes compacted. The trail becomes clear. That's what occurs with memory. One exposure leaves a weak trace, but repetition and especially engagement with the content packs that path down. But here's where it becomes fascinating. Not all repetition carries equal weight. You could scan the same page 10 times mechanically, letting your eyes slide across the words and still retain almost nothing. Why? Because your brain isn't registering passive scanning as a signal that this content is valuable. There's no challenge, no exertion, no links being formed. It's like walking the same trail in the snow, yet placing your feet in slightly different spots each time. You never strengthen the identical path. So, what actually succeeds? What makes content adhere? The solution rests in something known as elaborative encoding. This is the process of linking fresh information to things you already understand, of turning abstract ideas into tangible examples, of posing questions about what you're reading instead of merely taking it in. Suppose you're studying how the heart circulates blood. If you simply read the heart possesses 4 chambers and valves that stop backward flow, that's one type of learning. It's abstract, it's disconnected. But if you pause and ponder, hold on, why 4 chambers? Why not 2 or 6? And these valves, they're similar to check valves in plumbing that prevent water from reversing direction. Now, you're doing something distinct. You're tying the fresh information to something familiar. You're inquiring why things exist as they do. You're constructing mental frameworks. This is what renders information memorable. Not repetition by itself, but meaningful processing. Your brain preserves things that it has wrestled with, manipulated, questioned, and linked. It's the difference between hearing a phone number once and dialing that phone number. When you dial it, you must actively recall each digit, arrange it in order, and perform an action. That active retrieval is what builds strong memory traces. There's a concept in neuroscience called the generation effect. It demonstrates that information we create ourselves is recalled better than information we merely read. If you read a sentence like "the starving man ate the pizza," you'll remember it somewhat. But if you read "the starving man ate the ira and must provide the word yourself," you'll remember it far better. Why? Because generation requires retrieval. It requires you to search your memory, to activate related ideas, to produce something rather than simply receive it. This is why summarizing what you read in your own terms is so effective. When you shut the book and attempt to explain the concept to yourself, you're compelling your brain to rebuild the information from memory. And that rebuilding process, that's what creates strong, lasting memories. Every time you successfully retrieve something, you're reinforcing the pathway to it. Now, there's another vital component: comprehension. Genuine comprehension creates memory almost effortlessly. Think about the contrast between memorizing a string of random digits E and understanding why those digits form a pattern. Random digits are tough to remember because there's no framework, no significance. But if you comprehend that the digits represent the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two preceding it, suddenly they're simple. You don't need to memorize each separate number, because you grasp the rule that produces them. This is why reading for comprehension, not merely for exposure, matters so much. When you understand something profoundly, when you grasp not just what occurs, but why it occurs, you're creating a compressed representation in your mind. Instead of storing 1,000 separate facts, you're storing the core principle that generates those facts. It's vastly more efficient. Consider how you remember narratives versus how you remember lists. Narratives are simple to recall because they possess structure, cause and effect, character, motivation, sequences that feel logical. Lists are difficult because they're arbitrary. There's no natural connection between item 1 and item 2. This reveals something crucial. Our memory is built for meaning, not for random information. So, when you're reading, especially something dense or technical, the secret is to constantly hunt for the meaning. Don't just read what occurs. Ask why it occurs. Don't just accept a claim. Consider what it suggests. Does this new piece of information challenge something you believed earlier? Does it clarify something you found confusing? Does it link to something in a completely different field? These questions aren't additional labor beyond reading. They are the labor. They're what transforms reading from a passive activity into an active one. And active processing is what creates memory. There's also the question of timing. Our brains consolidate memories in stages. When you first read something, it exists in what we call working memory. This is temporary, like RAM in a computer. It holds information just long enough for you to use it. But for information to shift into long-term storage, it needs to be consolidated. And consolidation takes time. This is why cramming rarely works well. You can force information into working memory right before an exam, and it might remain when you need it, but a week later it's vanished. It never got properly consolidated. The information never moved from that temporary storage into the stable long-term networks of your brain. What succeeds is spaced repetition. Instead of reading something once for an hour, you're better off reading it for 20 minutes, then returning to it tomorrow, then again in 3 days, then again in a week. Each time you revisit the material, you're compelling your brain to retrieve it, and retrieval is what strengthens memory. The spacing allows your brain time to consolidate between sessions. But here's what makes this even more powerful. Each time you return, don't just reread. Test yourself. Try to recall the main ideas before you look at them again. This retrieval practice is one of the most effective learning techniques we know. It feels harder than just rereading. It's meant to. That difficulty is the signal your brain needs to recognize that this information is valuable. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. You can watch videos of people riding bikes. You can read about balance and momentum. But you won't learn until you actually climb on the bike and struggle with it. The struggle, the wobbling, the near falls. These aren't barriers to learning. They are learning. Your brain learns by doing, by failing, by correcting. The same applies to intellectual learning. The struggle to recall, the effort to reconstruct, the work of generating answers. This is what creates lasting memory. Now let's discuss something subtle yet crucial: context and cues. Memories aren't stored alone. They're stored in networks linked to all sorts of contextual details. Where were you when you learned something? What were you considering? What else was occurring? All of these become cues that can trigger the memory later. This is why it's easier to remember something in the same setting where you learned it: the room, the lighting, even the scent. These all become tied to the memory. But here's the issue. If you only study in one location, your memory becomes reliant on those cues. And when you need to recall the information elsewhere, it's harder. The solution is to change your learning environment. Read in various places, review material in different settings. This forces your brain to encode the information more abstractly, less dependent on specific cues. It makes the memory more adaptable, more durable, more accessible from different mental states. There's also the matter of depth. You can read something superficially, grasping the basic idea, or you can read it deeply, grappling with implications and connections. Deep processing creates stronger memories. It's the difference between recognizing a face and truly knowing a person. Recognition is shallow. You know you've seen them before. Knowing is deep. You understand their personality, their history, their quirks. When you read, aim for knowing, not just recognizing. This means pausing often. It means asking questions. What's the author truly conveying here? Why does this point matter? How does this relate to what came earlier? Could this be phrased differently? Do you agree with this? Why or why not? These questions might reduce your reading speed, but they dramatically increase what you retain. And here's something fascinating. Over time, as you improve at this kind of active reading, it doesn't slow you down as much. You develop the skill of reading and thinking simultaneously. The questioning becomes instinctive. You start to notice patterns more quickly, make connections more easily. Your understanding accelerates. Let's examine one final aspect: the role of emotion. We remember things better when they're emotionally meaningful. A dramatic narrative sticks more than a dull listing of facts. Why? Because emotion serves as one of the brain's signals that something matters. When you feel something, curiosity, surprise, confusion, excitement, your brain pays more attention. It encodes more deeply. This doesn't mean you need to artificially create emotion while reading, but it does mean that remaining engaged, remaining curious, allowing yourself to be surprised or puzzled, these states facilitate memory. If you're bored, if you're merely going through the motions, your brain interprets that as a signal that this information isn't valuable. It allocates fewer resources to encoding it. So, if you find yourself bored while reading something you need to remember, that's a problem to fix, not just a mood to endure. Can you approach the material differently? Can you discover a question within it that genuinely interests you? Can you search for connections to something you actually care about? Sometimes the key to remembering isn't technique. It's finding a way to genuinely connect with the material. All of this leads to a fundamental truth about memory. It's not a passive recording, it's an active reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you're rebuilding it from fragments. And the act of rebuilding it alters it slightly, strengthens certain links, weakens others. Your memory is alive, dynamic, constantly being reshaped by how you use lit. This means that the best way to remember what you read is to use it. Write about it. Explain it to someone else. Apply it to a problem you're trying to solve. Consider how it shifts what you believed before. Let it interact with other ideas. Every time you actively engage with the information, you're reinforcing it, integrating it more deeply into your web of knowledge. The person who reads a book and then closes it, moving on to the next thing, will forget most of it. The person who reads a book and then spends time reflecting on it, discussing it, applying its concepts, will remember it for years. The difference isn't in the reading itself. It's in what happens afterward. Here's the wonderful part. Once you understand how memory works, you stop battling against your brain. You cooperate with it. You recognize that forgetting is natural and expected. when you don't provide your brain the signals it requires. You understand that difficulty during learning isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign you're doing something right. That struggle to recall, that effort to connect ideas, that work of generating rather than just receiving. This is what builds lasting knowledge. Memory isn't about having a superior brain. It's about using your brain the way it's designed to be used. And it's designed for meaning, for connection, for active engagement. Give it those things and you'll be astonished at what remains with you. Not because you possess a special talent, but because you're working with the natural mechanisms of how learning happens. The next time you pick up something to read, something you want to remember, don't just read it. Engage with it. Question it. Connect it. Reconstruct it in your own words. Return to it. Test yourself on it. Let it change how you think about other things. Treat reading not as a task to finish, but as a conversation to have with ideas. Do this year and you won't need tricks or mnemonics for most of what you read. Understanding itself will be your memory. The ideas will stick not because you forced them to, but because they became part of how you think